Hello, and welcome to the About Healing podcast, a show created for those on or awakening into their spiritual journeys, and who are ready, wanting, and learning how to heal themselves. I am your host, About Healing medium and certified spiritual healer, Sheree Buckman. It is my purpose to guide others to the path of self-healing and to inspire those on their spiritual journeys in finding their truths. Join me as I share my experience and unfiltered perspective in healing, as well as the incredible wisdom of the loving energy that guides us. Let's begin. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of About Healing podcast. Hello, Miss Copper.
Good morning. How are you?
I am doing great this morning. This is actually a really fun morning. I was going to say episode. That's not true, because we're going to go deep into a topic that's not always the funnest to talk about.
I was going to be like, wow, okay. A little sadistic there, but be my guest.
Right? However, no, it's one of the pieces that I want to share, at least here in the announcement portion, that I'm excited to talk about. So I do need to rephrase and be specific there. Well, first of all, I do want to put the reminder out to everybody that I have a newsletter. So I have an About Healing newsletter that I send out once a month. This is something that you can subscribe to on my website at abouthealingmedium.com. And there's subscribe here or go to newsletters. There's even a tab where you can see all my past newsletters. I started the newsletters last year, so there is a full 12 in there from 2022, and I'm still going on. Just know the newsletters, as I'm writing them, they are announcements and updates of what's going on and within my world, essentially, the business world or the healing world. But every month, I write about a healing topic of what I'm going through. And then I share that experience and the lessons I've learned from it. So it's just another source if you're wanting some more information on the spiritual healing. Sign up and subscribe. It's emailed to you every month directly into your inbox. So yes, now on to the fun, exciting announcement. I don't know if that last one was fun and exciting. It sounded kind of dull to me. But anyway, can you believe it, Copper? This is our anniversary episode.
And it feels like it's gone so fast. And I think that has a lot to say with how much I have enjoyed working with you, because I can't believe it's been 12 months.
You're right. First of all, I mean, I feel like you might be slightly lying in that and just saying that because we're being recorded right now that you've thoroughly enjoyed this experience. But
there's only been a little bit of crying.
But yeah, so on February 22nd of 22, so 2/22 of 22, we aired our very first episode of About Healing podcast. And of course, it was something that started a little bit differently. Katie was a part of this, and we really didn't have any idea what we were doing. We just knew, let's talk. And then again, it's just evolved since then, and it keeps evolving. And we're growing and we're learning. And you know what? I just want to say thank you, and this is exciting. And I guess thank you for being patient as I'm learning to grow and how to speak and do the podcast and becoming more clear and more on topic. Yes. I know Copper's excited about that.
You know, and I think the funny thing is like, I really, truly, like when I saw that it was our anniversary, I'm like, oh, I mean, like, yeah, somewhere in the back of my head, I knew, because I know what day it is. I know.
Do you?
No, I don't. At no given time do I have any clue what month it is. But I literally just sent you a text the other day, right? When I was editing one of the episodes, telling you, just listening to it, I was really struck about how much growth you had personally made and focusing and making your point so clear. The improvement since the beginning has been not that you were horrible in the beginning.
It's okay.
That makes it sound like it was a mess. And it's not that it was a mess.
It was raw.
Your growth in the last year, and I was saying this having not realized that it had actually literally been a year, that it was just amazing to me.
Yeah, and it's something that made me cry. Like, I had happy tears that morning. I woke up to it because we're on a different time difference. She texts me in the middle of the night and I'm sleeping.
Well, and it's not just a time difference. Like, you go to bed like an old lady.
I totally do.
So I texted you at like midnight knowing damn well you were not going to see that until morning.
I had been asleep for hours. Like,
I'm texting you like, I'll get her. Ha.
And I was nice and did not respond when I woke up because I knew either you were just going to bed.
Right.
Oh my goodness. But yes, it's been amazing. And there's been a lot of growth all around. I mean, and same thing to Copper. I know it's funny, but we send each other messages all the time, just, boosting each other up. I'm like, You edited it so amazing. You make me sound so professional. I know it didn't sound like that before. And so, as I have mentioned, especially in the last couple of episodes, what was that, episode 2 of this season, I was talking about the journey through last season of starting the podcast. I use the podcast as a huge comparison of growth and the healing and the things that I'm doing because it is. This is huge and bold for myself. And I had mentioned before that the theme for me, my big healing theme, the big lessons of last year for me were facing my fears. And so what a beautiful way to me, this is a big synchronistic, beautiful, universal perfection of timing of the topic coming in today and it being the anniversary for our podcast, because I had a rough draft written out of what I wanted in line of what the episodes would be for this season. And for this one, I had fear. And so what a great way to link it again with what I've learned from last season, bringing this forward for all of you in our step in reclaiming our power. And this is definitely a topic we need to get into. We have to talk about this to understand where we've left our power and how to bring it back and kind of harness it back in. Fear is a very, very small, very simple 4-letter word, but it packs such a potent punch. We know what fear is. All of us as humans, we know what this is, and it is not pleasant feeling or the memories associated to that. But fear is an emotion. Fear is an emotion. So fear is triggered to signal a survival response to immediate danger to our physical, emotional, or mental health. But the fears that I'm talking about today are the ones that are keeping you from thriving. We're not just going into the survival ones, but the thriving ones. There is such a broad spectrum of reasons that we fear. So while we are born with survival instincts that include our physical and mental response to fear, we are also conditioned. Okay, we learn. A lot of fears are learned responses that we take on from a young age. The truth is, you may even hold fears that are not even yours because maybe you've never even had an experience or even a reference to create that fear in the first place. As an example of what I'm trying to explain, there was a time when my son was really young. So this was maybe a few years old, 3 or 4 years old. And I don't know where it came from, but I do remember him asking me, Mama, what are you afraid of? I don't know. I guess I felt like I needed to give him an answer to know that, we all have fears and that it's okay. So I, sat there for a minute, not thinking about the repercussions of what I was about to say. And I told him, I'm afraid of heights and snakes. What happened sometime later is that I noticed that he started taking on my fears. And there was no reason. He had no experience or examples for him to even say or react to those type of fears. And I believe I overheard him one day talking to someone. I don't even remember the whole circumstance, but I do remember him saying, "Oh, I'm afraid of heights." And I had to stop in that moment and wonder, where did that come from? And I realized that, oh my goodness, he took on mine, which completely made me go back and think too about my own fear. And it was projecting. Now, I never went out and were acting on these fears. It never stopped me from doing things. I may be uncomfortable with these things, and that's actually where it is. When I really got down into it, I was more uncomfortable with these situations. But these were not true big fears that would stop me from doing things or where I truly felt threatened. In fact, I even jumped out of a plane when I was like 20 years old just to prove that I could do it and face it, thinking I was facing a fear. It was just uncomfortable. And honestly, one of the best things I ever did. Would I do it again? No. But I did it. And I'm proud to say that. Anyway, I digress. But it was just my point just to say that, see how easy it is for even our young ones as a young mind to latch on to these things for those that you trust and the ones that you love, saying, okay, well, if they're afraid, maybe I should be afraid of it. But no, and that's why we kind of have to go back and we have to look at the things that we feel that we are afraid of and really find its source. Like, do we have an experience that caused us to hold on to this? Or, I mean, is this conscious or unconscious? Is it connected to somebody else? So on and so forth. So as we get into this episode, I really want to put a disclaimer here because I am going to go deep about the concept of fear and the emotions and kind of working through it and things like that. But I am not a licensed therapist. And I just want to put that out there for you to understand that the things that I am talking about are from my own personal experiences and also for what I learn from spirit. As always, take what feels right for you and leave what doesn't. So as I mentioned, fear is an emotion. And fear is also a condition of the human-based experience. It's part of the ego. And I say that because our souls do not fear anything, nothing. Outside of the human experience, we understand that we are eternal beings who intentionally seek wisdom from any and every form of experience to have what we as humans, it's the ego, classify as good and bad because those are judgments. And we are always leading with love with all of those involved. It's that knowing, that understanding of that everything that we go through is part of our growth. That we learn from it, we take it, and that's the wisdom because wisdom is experience. So as I was creating this episode, honestly, this topic poured out. Actually, I knew the topic I wanted to talk about, but I had no idea what was going to go with it. It was just the word fear. That was it. And then I always like to just a brainstorming outline, and I just write quick notes. And before I knew it, I had 3 pages. And this is all part of it because what I want to talk about now is part of that human-based experience and trying to unravel it and try to see it from different perspectives. Because one of the things that came up was to explain what one of us may fear the most, that the next person wouldn't even flinch or blink at, is that our fears are not across the board. There is no one fear that is completely across the board for everybody, even though there are common fears. It is not for everybody. And the most common fear that I found is death, which is interesting. Now, I personally am not afraid of death. Well, obviously, for me, I have learned so much, and I talk with spirit, everybody. Like, I talk with those who've already gone through it. So I know that there's more to it than that, and I can feel it. And that's just for me. It's my knowing and it's my feeling, and it's not a scary or dark place no matter what you've been through. And the type of, consciousness I have communicated with that have made choices that we here judge in the most extreme ways, that again, once we leave the human body, that again, there's nothing but love. And it's understanding that mistakes had happened. If you want to call it mistakes, they don't call it that. It was like, well, I made those choices. I need to learn and grow so that I can make different choices. I think I really digressed. I had no idea. This was not planned, this last part. So I'm trying to pull myself back in and know where we're going. But apparently it's important. It was important. It came through. So I'm leaving that right there. So that's where we're going. So as I had kind of highlighted for a moment earlier, is that some of the fears that we have are learned experiences. Okay, they're due to what we have gone through within our lives. And what some of the other really common fears would be associated to experiences. For example, like the fear of abandonment. This is a major fear out there for a lot of people, but this is also an experience-based fear. Ones who, especially when you're young or in childhood and you had a parent who was not there or involved, or you didn't know your parents, or you felt left alone, neglect and things like that, this can cause and bring on that fear. Thinking that now and bringing that on, that it can happen at any time. Or like the loss of identity, because maybe you were taught at one point in your life, or there was someone there who said you were nothing without this one particular role. whether it was a job or it was an ability, an aspect of yourself, whether it is your beauty or a very particular skill you can do, or your intelligence, et cetera, that you are nothing without this one thing. Well, that can create that. And that brings in that if I lose this one thing, like, who would I be without it? And it creates that fear. Now, with these fears that we create and that we bring on, we begin to feed the fear. We individually feed this fear by believing and expecting the same experience again and again, even if you haven't experienced it before, or whether you've experienced many times before. We start to believe that it is the expectation instead of the exception. And there's a big difference there, that because it happened once, it must happen again or every time. So then we begin to do everything we can to not experience this fear from happening, or this one thing, the thing that you're fearing. Maybe it's putting yourself or not putting yourself in certain situations to avoid it. And these can be really unhealthy. It could be also overworking yourself to make sure that nothing changes around you so you don't lose a thing. That is extremely stressful. Just trying to control or trying to avoid situations that can naturally happen causes a lot of stress and anxiety. So if you're suffering from stresses and anxieties because maybe about these fear situations, it's because you're trying to control something that cannot be controlled. So it goes in, and then it's creating more of those, like I call it the physical ailments. Now it's manifesting in physical ways, whether it is like emotional or becoming sick, high blood pressure, stress, anxiety, these type of things. Well, and also we need to understand how to recognize these fears, because fear manifests differently in everyone. It is important to understand not only our own behaviors when it comes to fear, but also those around us. Because when we begin to understand even our fellow mankind and like their behaviors, we'll start to understand also the soul and what they're going through. And it's also that compassion part, that never ever is anything exactly like it seems when it comes to human behavior. We also need to be careful in how we expect certain behaviors or emotions to be expressed, because there are none. Everyone deals with these big emotions in different ways. It's like the same thing with grief. There's no one way through it. People have to go through it differently. We cannot judge one another or tell them that they need to go through be through this one period or stage within that to get through to the next. Well, it's the same thing. We can't have these expectations of how people react to fear. So some of like the common or expected responses there's the 4 F's, and these are the common responses to like life-threatening situations. And it's fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And so for a second, I'm going to explain what fawn is, because I personally had to look it up because I never heard that phrase. I'm like a deer? Well, isn't that like freeze? I don't know. I didn't understand it, so I had to look it up myself. So for anybody else, I'm going to help you here for a hot second. Fawn is a trauma response where a person develops people-pleasing behaviors to avoid conflict and to establish a sense of safety. Whoa. Realizing that, oh my gosh, that they think they just spoke to me so deeply right there. I didn't realize that this is one of the big life-threatening like trauma responses that I have taken on my whole life and finally working through. Like, holy moly. That was a holy moly moment for me. Anyway, but I want to go deeper in some of the other ways that I see and I feel and what has come through, especially in sessions where we're talking about how people have reacted to their fear and these behaviors. Because one of them is, and by the way, these are not limited to, these are just a few of the examples, especially the common ones that I've seen. But anger and bullying, these are huge, because this is more of those trying to conceal their fear. Okay, they don't want others to see their own fear, or they feel that if they stay the feared one, then it keeps them in the safe zone. To me, isn't that interesting? If you can look back at a lot of situations you've been in with other people and them projecting their anger, or those who bully. This was big. So there was a part in my career, my past career, where I did presentations in schools where we talked about bullying. We did some anti-bullying things. But this is actually a part of, not always, and I have to be clear here, and this is that social worker part of me that's been through this, is that sometimes those who have been abused and those who have had control taken away from them, they try to over-assert themselves and trying to take it back by being a bully and taking it from other people. Another one is substance abuse. These are those that are avoiding the fear. It's numbing the response to not feel this big, scary emotion or to deal with it at all. But really, this is just a delayed response because eventually we're going to have to. Or you have those who are frozen or stuck like in their life. And these are those that are trying to control the fear. The ones who avoid changing absolutely anything. So they avoid facing or drawing to them what they fear the most. And also there's judgments. This is deflecting the fear is what I call this one. Those people that have very heavy judgments, that judge everything that you do or somebody else does. But in reality, they're averting their own fears. They can't look within, so they're judging it on the outside for everybody else. So again, not only was this important to bring these up as an awareness of what other people are going through, but also within yourself. It's recognizing, do I do this? Is this a way that I am projecting things that I fear? Or maybe putting it on others rather than understanding it? Well, see, and that's where I want to go next. Like, how do we work through that? So we individually give our fears power. We're fueling it. We fuel them by these behaviors, by concealing it, by avoiding, controlling, or deflecting it. So how do we take that power back? And there's different ways to do this depending on what it is that you're going through, what fear it is, and how you got it. That's why I had to explain that it was important to look back to see, is it yours in the first place? Or did you inherit it from someone else? You know, the first thing, and this is a big one, especially I found with my son, is to learn about it. I feel that we fear a lot of things that we do not understand. And there are so many things that we can sit down and if we do the research or we learn more about it, like if we learn more about, like it's the fear of trying something different. But if we learn about it, we find that it's not so scary once we kind of understand how to do it. So this is kind of like maybe for those more irrational fears. So to me in this, the big popular phrase, knowledge is power, this is what this keys into here. Is that by understanding it, you're taking back your power. You know, and in his big example here, again, going back to my son, apparently, I let my son watch The Wizard of Oz too early, before he was developmentally ready for the movie. Not thinking, like, it's a kid's movie. We're going to watch it. It's all good. He's 5. And I was here and prepared to try to talk him through the flying monkey scenes when that came. But we didn't even make it into Oz yet without him crumbling in fear of what he saw. And I didn't even think about this part. And he is the tornado. After watching this movie, my son had this huge, I believe it to be an irrational fear because he's never been in such a thing and he saw it in a movie. Maybe it's rational. I don't know. But it was so much that every night I promise you, this has been something that's been going on for years. Right after I put him to bed, he would come out and say, "Mommy, is there a tornado coming? Mommy, is a tornado coming?" And I had to explain to him that that is not something that's common, at least where we live, and to explain what happens, that was a movie and trying to go on into it. So fast forwarding past that, we've been dealing with this for a long time. Again, the more I explained, it didn't help anything, and I didn't know how to help him. So I was like, you know what? And he's a brilliant kid. So this kid loves to read everything going on. So I'm like, you know what? You need to learn about it more. Let's learn about it. And holy cow. So I started buying books about it. It was like the Magic School Bus and the tornado and all these other fun ones. And he was obsessed with the Magic School Bus. And then he started getting really into weather. I swear I have a few future scientists on my hand because he can tell you anything about volcanoes and tornadoes. He knows like scientific facts about tornadoes now that he finds it now fun to know these things. Since he has done this, he has not asked that question again. Not once has he asked that question again. He definitely knows what to do in case one comes, where it's the safest place to do, where to go, what to grab his sister and, all of these things. And he knows what to do. So the fact that now he knows so much more about it and how common they are and the different types and wind speeds and things that I have no idea about on the scientific end that he does, like he feels more empowered now and he feels better about it because he did. He took his power back. He's now not even completely aware of what happened. He took that power back from this irrational fear by knowing so much more about it. I feel so inspired by my son. So proud of him. Stay tuned in 10 years from now, and we'll see where he's going to college and what he's studying. Maybe weather, I don't know. So that is one tip and one example of what we can do to start working towards taking our power back. Another one is to heal it. Because as we spoke about, some of these we take on from experiences when we were young. Like I spoke about the abandonment and loss of identity. Well, these are fears that come from unresolved traumas. If you did not receive the comfort or the counseling or therapy to help you through those times to understand that you were not responsible for those, you can take these on and bring that loss into everyday life. My recommendation here is to work either on the process of self-healing or finding a therapist or a counselor that can help you through that, a professional who is licensed. I love my therapist, so I'm throwing it out there. Much love to them. Not that I have multiple therapists like that I see and talk to, although I wouldn't be opposed to it. I just realized how that sounded, but I have many friends that are therapists. And I have seen therapists, so I'm also not saying that it's not okay. And if you need multiple, that is fantastic. And I think that is a wonderful, wonderful sign of self-love and self-healing. I just want to be clear here. No judgments. And another tip is, again, depending on what it is you're afraid of, is to brave it and do it. Like my example of heights and how I jumped out of an airplane. This might be an extreme end of facing a fear, but I was 20. I say that now. I probably would have done it eventually even. I'd probably do it now if I hadn't done it yet. Will I do it again? No. Because I did. I faced it. I did it. It was great. But let's not ruin the experience. Again, these are more of those irrational ones. You know, maybe we need to go in, and once you've learned about it and you've kind of gone along that process, well, let's try to figure out why we are so afraid of it. Maybe by putting yourself in the situation. Obviously, you probably want to make sure you have some support and things like that, especially if these things bring you some heavy anxiety, and do it in small phases. No one says you have to jump out of a plane as a first response to dealing with heights, but maybe it's climbing a ladder, a short one the first time, or whatever it may be, is doing something small and work your way to that. Another one for me on this, example of being brave and doing it, like I really am not a fan of snakes. I know this is a common thing out there too, and some of you are with me on this. Like even the sight of one on TV makes me cringe and I have to close my eyes. Like it freaks me out. My kids make the noise that all the time just to freak me out. I'm like, not a fan. The truth is, I'm not truly like afraid of them. I just, the slitheriness, it just, But have I held one? Yes, absolutely. A couple times. Big ones too, because it was that moment of saying, I'm not going to let this take advantage of me. And it was about a year ago or so, I went on a field trip with my son. I had a lot of examples for my son because he's older. He has more life lessons, apparently. Went on this field trip and we went to like this nature center. It was awesome. And of course, we're sitting there and they're bringing out all these different animals and things for the kids to see, small things, turtles, and all this kind of fun stuff. And of course, the snake comes out. And I don't really react because I don't really have the big reactions anymore to them. It's just, I'll look at it. Do I want it in my face? No, not really. I don't. But I noticed that there was one kid that got up and so afraid, really afraid, like making the noises, getting up, and his dad was with him too. I remember that. And he's over there and it was this really big deal. Like there was a lot of noise and a lot of breathing and crying, even though the snake was across the room and other kids were looking at it. But I know that feeling. So I don't know, something in me decided to get up and go and talk to this kid. And I went over there and I said, look, and I explained to him how I really am not a fan of them either. Like I feel him and his reactions. And I asked him this, if I am brave and I touch it, would you? And he immediately stopped and he looked at me because I was honest, like I really don't like them. I really didn't want to touch it then either. But it was this thought that like, where did he get this fear? Was this something he learned from something else or from someone else? Well, what if we can do the reverse, is to show him that we can be brave even within our fear and do it anyway. And I still can't believe it. That kid did it. He was taking really deep breaths, but after he saw me do it, and then a couple of other kids came next to him too, and there was so much love and support in this. Like, it was a beautiful thing. It really was. And I think his dad just stood there and was just like in shock, like, oh, wow. But I did, and I was with him. I was like, look, we'll do this together. And it was just a one finger thing. But he did it, and he didn't cry, and afterwards you can see the pride on his face. And he was able to sit down and calm down again, even with that snake out, and which was a completely different reaction than it was before. But maybe he's not in love with snakes now, but it at least trimmed the reaction of the fear down to, of not being super fearful, but maybe just a dislike. Is understanding that. So look how powerful that can be, that even if you were brave enough to face it, it'll show others too that they can also do the same. So as we come down to wrapping up this episode, I just really want to explain that the key to dealing with fear is faith and love. And I really mean that for yourself. Like, it's that love and faith in yourself that you can get through it, but it's love and faith for others too, that are going through it or to support you or whatever which way. But it's also in that universe, I guess it's like universe synchronicities and lessons that are being drawn to us. In God, if that is what you believe, or what other big source of belief you have, that what we're going through and what we are experiencing are for bigger pieces. Because no matter the outcome, you will be okay, even if you're not. Because we like to give a lot of false hope, like it's going to be okay, especially in these really big traumatic instances. But no, first of all, you may not be okay. It's going to be hard and it's going to be difficult. The thing is, by giving the false hope that everything's going to remain the same and everything will go back to the way it was, no, that's not going to happen. But you can survive the change and the trauma. That's where it's going to be okay. Because we are not guaranteed our health, our wealth, our pride, or our life. Especially that. If we stop living because of our fears, then we give up on all of the possibilities and true magic life has to offer. And that's a big thing, because we will. This is not a might. This is not a may. This is a guarantee. We will fail. We will lose. We will get hurt. We will be laughed at. And we will eventually die. It's a guarantee. These are definites, but they are part of the human experience. But it is your choice to get back up, to not be defeated, to take your power back and stop fearing or fighting what cannot be controlled, or even what can be controlled, because life happens. It is taking all of that and making the choice to thrive instead of just surviving, to thrive. So let's be brave, become wise, and leave this plane without regrets. For further spiritual guidance on my spiritual healing journey on this topic, I just want to refer you to abouthealingmedium.com. In the website menu, select About Healing Newsletter and search for the October 2022 edition. It is called The Shackles of Fear. This is one that I wrote on my own personal experience of its other kind of lessons and tips of healing in fear. So if you feel so obliged, please go ahead and follow that. Thank you all for taking this very brave journey in the topic of fear. And until next time, my beautiful souls, be kind to yourself. With so much love and gratitude, I want to thank you for listening to this week's episode. My hope today is that the message continues to guide you along your path to healing. To learn more about me and my purposeful work, visit my website at abouthealingmedium.com. You can also follow About Healing Medium on Facebook and Instagram, where you can find the episode's healing guidance, quotes, tips, insights, and chances to win free stuff. To ask a question or to share comments, email me at abouthealingpodcast@gmail.com, or feel free to reach me on Facebook and Instagram at About Healing Medium. Until next time, be kind to yourself.